Hi, everybody. Chapter 11 is called Analyzing Texts, and we are actually focusing on analyzing visual texts rather than written texts because you already have analyzed written texts by reading those essays from the New York Times. You've analyzed several literacy narratives, and so you'll be analyzing texts as we go through the semester and academically. This time, I'd like you to analyze a visual text, and we'll talk about that in the following slides. What is analysis? So, analysis defined is essentially taking a whole thing, breaking it down into parts, and putting it back together again with more knowledge and intellectual understanding of it. We can also think of analysis this way: how texts say what they say, and how texts achieve their effects. Those are the main definitions of analyzing a text academically. Now, as we've been talking about the word text all semester, you may wonder what a text is if we're focusing on something visual. I've used the word so far to mean something written, and that's generally what we think of when we think of a text, like a textbook or any kind of text that you write on your phone. Often it means words. Sometimes, however, it means images. And sending a text could be an emoji. That's a text. In the same way, academically, a text can include photos, illustrations, advertisements, video, films. It can also include music and sounds. A text can combine words, images, and sounds. So a text is something that we look at, that we hear, that we see. Visually, a text is a photo, an advertisement, a video. We're constantly confronted with texts that can be analyzed for their influence on what we think. So all of these things comprise a text. Let me talk a little bit now about the one essay that you will have read by the end of this week from chapter 11. Remember, I wrote an email earlier today telling you that you did not have to read the other two essays that are located within chapter 11. But this first essay is very important to us because not only is it student authored, and so it's very similar to the way you'll be writing, but it also visually analyzes a text, or in other words, it analyzes a visual text. So, in her essay called The Fashion Industry, Hannah Berry compares two visual advertisements. Now, you're not writing a comparison. Her essay is longer than yours. Her essay, I would say, is probably around 1,500 words. So it's about double the length of what yours will be. The first ad for Clark's shoes is on page 99 in our book, and the second is for Sorel shoes on page 100. So the advertisements themselves are actually posted in the book as the text she's analyzing. Berry argues that the two ads are defying the stereotyped norms of what defines beauty. Instead, these ads tell us to be unique as individuals, and they're persuading us to buy their shoes ultimately in um, utilizing this idea of uniqueness rather than fitting into the norm of female beauty. Berry describes in detail both ads, and she analyzes how the ads support her thesis. She ties together both ads in the conclusion by arguing that young women are told to accessorize their inner beauty with articles of clothing geared toward their distinctive individual desires. And so that's how she analyzes the ads. She talks about them culturally, socially, and how they attempt to persuade us to essentially buy the shoes. Here are some features of textual analysis, and this incorporates features for all kinds of texts, but we're thinking about visual texts, of course. One is description. It is necessary to describe the text under consideration, at least briefly. And I have talked at length about description from our last paper. Context. As texts are in conversation with each other, the context in which the text resides is important. Context includes the cultural trends, the society around the text, and other circumstances that form the setting for understanding it. Clear interpretation. How do you, as the writer of the essay, interpret the text? What is it saying, and how is it saying it? What do you think it means? And then reasonable support for your conclusion. How does the text itself contribute to your argument and interpretation? What features guide us to that interpretation? So, description, context, clear interpretation, and support. All of those are important for a good analysis. All right, this next slide has a list of questions, and I'm going to actually read each one of these questions. What I suggest you do later when you're going back to draft and revise your paper is pause at this slide and either take a picture for yourself so that you can have it constantly with you, or write down these questions so they can help. What you'll be doing is thinking about which of these questions are most important to your particular focus. You will not be able to incorporate all of these ideas into your paper, but many of them will be important to how you craft your argument and find support. So first of all, what is being advertised and what is its context in American culture and society? The three ads I have are different. One of them is an advertisement for the World Wildlife Fund, WWF. Another is an advertisement for a website that is promoting stronger marriage. And the third is for McDonald's. So they are all quite different, as I mentioned. And really, the third one is the only one that's advertising a product for you to go out and buy. The first two are advertising websites to visit so that, of course, in an American capitalist society, you can give your money to them, or at least to raise awareness, which will eventually allow you to think about giving money. So after considering what's being advertised in its context, what is the general ambiance of the advertisement? And if you don't understand what that means, the word ambiance, what mood does it create? And what's the atmosphere of the ad? How does it do this? What is its design? How are the basic elements arranged? Does it stand alone, or is it part of a group of images? What is the relationship between pictorial elements and written material? That's very important in an ad. What is the use of space? Are some parts of the image grouped together? What is the background? Does the content seem close or far away? Are you looking at it from above or from below or straight on? How is the visual symbolic? Does it tell a story, and how? What is that story? If there are figures, what are they like? And this one will only be important concerning that Finn and the panda. I don't think there are any other men, women, children, or animals in the other two advertisements. But in the first one, we have the shark fin and we have the symbol of the World Wildlife Fund at the bottom. What action is taking place and what significance does it have? Again, there's really no action in any of these. We can assume there might be action about to occur with a shark swimming, but the other two are very still. We can also, in the second one, consider that it asks us to perform some kind of action in our head, which then results in something for us to think about. And that's what you'd want to do when you describe and analyze the ad, of course. What theme can we find in the advertisement? What about the language used? All of them have at least a little bit of text. Does the language essentially provide information, or does it try to generate some kind of emotional response, or both? What about the lighting, use of color, and angle of the shot? What sociological, political, economic, or cultural attitudes are reflected in the ad? How does it make you feel? What connects it to the world? Where is it being advertised? Who is the audience? What do you know about the publication? Or anything of that nature. I didn't give you any of that, so the only thing you might want to think about is the audience. You don't know the publication. You don't know where it came from. It honestly doesn't matter in a short paper like this. This is certainly enough questions and points for you to ponder and think about. So after you've done some pre-writing, of course, and we talked about pre-writing for our last paper, the first thing to do after analyzing it and considering the rhetorical situation is to write a thesis. And you'll be writing a thesis and pre-writing essentially at the same time. Without a thesis, your paper will have no direction. When analyzing any text, you're actually writing an argument. You are asserting that the text should be read a certain way, which is your way. And of course, the thesis may change as you continue to work on pre-writing and drafting, but at least with a thesis, you have a purpose, audience, and a stance in mind. And a thesis is examined and defined much more in the slideshow on the first chapter in the strategy section that I also posted in week 3. Now, this is a very short slide, but after pre-writing and writing a thesis, you honestly want to think about organization. Our book has 3 possibilities for organizing your analysis paper: thematically, part by part, or spatially. And look at page 126 in our text for how to follow whichever organizational pattern you choose. And finally, writing the paper, drafting it. We've gone through the process of pre-writing, writing a thesis, thinking about the rhetorical situation and organization, and now we're in drafting. How do you create the body paragraphs? You describe early in the essay the advertisement itself. You provide a context for your analysis. So you think about all of the things that are surrounding it, the culture and the society, and where it is located, what it's having a conversation with. State your thesis at the end of paragraph number 1. Integrate examples throughout your paper that support your thesis in several body paragraphs. Your paper should have a minimum of 5 paragraphs, 1 introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and 1 conclusion. And other slideshows in this week talk about writing a beginning and an ending. Another way to phrase those, of course, are introduction and conclusion. So that is our slideshow on analyzing a text, focusing on visual texts. Thanks a lot for listening. Bye-bye.